Perfect service or no tip. The sentence landed on the table harder than the black card Ethan Caldwell placed beside his plate. Conversations nearby softened. A couple at the next table paused mid-bite. Claire Bennett didn't flinch. She simply picked up her pen, met his eyes for a brief second, and said, "Understood, sir." The rain outside the Manhattan restaurant streaked the tall windows in thin silver lines. It was just past 7:30 p.m., peak dinner rush, and every table in La Vienne was filled with people who wore watches that cost more than a year of her rent. Claire moved through them with practiced ease. She carried a tray of sparkling water in one hand and balanced 3 plates on the other arm. Her steps were quiet. Her posture stayed straight. She reached Ethan's table again and placed the glass exactly 2 inches from his right hand. He noticed. Of course he did. "Medium rare," he said without looking up from his phone. "Exactly medium rare. Not medium. Not rare." Claire gave a small nod. "Chef temp is consistent here." He glanced up then, finally, his expression sharp and measured. "I'm not asking about the chef. I'm telling you my expectation." She held his gaze for half a beat longer than most servers would dare. "And I heard you." She turned smoothly and headed toward the kitchen, her black shoes silent against the polished floor. Behind the swinging doors, heat wrapped around her like a second uniform. The line cooks moved fast. Orders were called out. Plates clattered. "Table 12. Ribeye." "Medium rare," she said, placing the ticket down. "That's Caldwell," the expo muttered. "Guy tips big or nothing. Depends on his mood." Claire didn't respond. She adjusted the plate under the heat lamp and checked the sides. Truffle fries. Asparagus. Everything aligned. She lifted the plate herself instead of waiting. When she stepped back onto the floor, the restaurant felt louder. A glass shattered near the bar. Someone laughed too loudly. A child at table 7 was crying while his mother tried to calm him with a slice of cheesecake. Claire walked through it all without breaking rhythm. She placed the steak in front of Ethan with steady hands. "Ribeye. Medium rare." He cut into it immediately. The knife slid clean. A perfect pink center. He chewed once. Twice. Then set the fork down. Timing was off, he said. Claire didn't react. It took too long. She glanced briefly at the clock on the wall behind the bar. 8 minutes since order fire. Standard for a full house. "Your order came out within normal service time," she replied evenly. Ethan leaned back in his chair, fingers tapping lightly against the edge of the table. "Normal isn't what I asked for." The words hung between them. Claire reached for the water pitcher and refilled his glass without spilling a drop. "Then what did you ask for?" she said, her tone calm but direct. He studied her now. Not the uniform. Not the name tag. Precision, he answered. Claire set the pitcher down gently. "Precision usually comes with variables," she said. "People are one of them." A flicker crossed his face. It was small, but it was there. He hadn't expected that answer. Not from her. Not here. At the table behind him, someone whispered. The manager glanced over but didn't step in. Ethan picked up his fork again, slower this time. "You talk like you've done more than carry plates," he said. Claire offered a faint, polite smile. "I carry what's in front of me." She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. "Wait." She paused. "Where did you learn to think like that?" The question lingered longer than it should have. Claire didn't turn back right away. Her hand tightened slightly around the order pad. When she finally looked over her shoulder, her expression was composed, but something deeper sat behind her eyes. "Some places don't show up on a resume," she said. Then she walked away. And for the first time that night, Ethan Caldwell didn't check his phone. Claire moved past table 12 and into the narrow service corridor, but she did not slow down. She placed 2 finished plates onto a passing tray for another server and reached for the handheld terminal clipped to her apron. Table 7 needed a split check. Table 9 asked for extra lemon wedges. She tapped through the orders with precise motions, her mind tracking each request without hesitation. Behind her, the dining room continued to hum, but something had shifted. She could feel it. At the corner of her vision, she noticed the manager, Paul, standing near the bar, watching table 12 more closely than usual. He caught her eye and gave a subtle nod, the kind that meant stay sharp. Claire returned to the floor and approached another table, smiling as she refilled coffee for a middle-aged couple discussing their daughter's college applications. "You want a little more cream with that?" she asked. The woman nodded. "Thank you, honey. You have been wonderful tonight." Claire gave a small, genuine smile. "I appreciate that." As she turned, she heard the distinct sound of a chair shifting back. Ethan Caldwell stood from his seat at table 12. He adjusted his jacket with a measured motion and stepped slightly to the side, scanning the room as if recalibrating his surroundings. Then he walked directly toward the open kitchen pass. That alone drew attention. Customers did not approach the pass. "Not here." Paul moved immediately, intercepting him halfway. "Sir, if there is an issue, I can help you right here," Paul said, keeping his tone professional but firm. Ethan stopped. "There is no issue," he replied. "I am verifying process." Paul blinked once. "Process?" Ethan gestured lightly toward the kitchen. "Order timing. Execution consistency. I am curious how your team handles volume." Claire had just stepped back into earshot when she caught the last sentence. She did not interrupt. She stood near the service station, polishing a fork with a cloth, listening without appearing to listen. Paul forced a polite smile. "We run a tight operation. Our chef has been here 15 years. Ethan nodded once, then turned his head slightly, his eyes landing on Claire. "And your waitress," he added. "She compensates for variability." The words were neutral, but the weight behind them was not. Claire placed the fork down carefully and stepped forward. "If there is something specific you need, I can address it," she said. Ethan studied her again, this time with less distance. "You keep defending the system," he said. "Even when it fails you." Claire folded her hands lightly in front of her apron. "I am not defending anything," she replied. "I am describing what is real." Paul glanced between them, sensing the tension but unsure where it would land. "Sir, your table is ready whenever you would like to continue your meal," he said, trying to guide the moment back into routine. Ethan did not move immediately. "Do you log delays?" he asked, still looking at Claire. "Do you track who is responsible when something is late?" Claire answered before Paul could. "We track tickets. We adjust when needed. We do not assign blame like that." Ethan's jaw shifted slightly. "That sounds inefficient." Claire tilted her head just a fraction. "It sounds human." A server rushed past them carrying a tray of desserts. A chocolate soufflé wobbled slightly but held its shape. The smell of melted butter and sugar filled the air for a second before fading into the noise. Ethan exhaled slowly, then gave a short nod as if concluding an internal calculation. "Bring me the check when you are ready," he said. Claire did not move. "You have not finished your meal," she replied. He glanced back at his table. The steak sat half-eaten. The asparagus untouched. "I have seen enough," he said. Claire held his gaze. "Of the food," she asked, "or of the people?" Paul shifted his weight, clearly uncomfortable now. Ethan did not answer right away. Instead, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a slim leather wallet. He slid something out and placed it on the edge of the service counter. It was not a credit card. It was a folded piece of paper. Claire's eyes flicked down for a brief second. She recognized the header instantly. Columbia Engineering. Her hand tightened slightly against the fabric of her apron. When she looked back up, Ethan was already watching her reaction. And for the first time that night, she realized he had not been testing the service at all. Claire did not reach for the paper right away. She kept her hand still at her sides, her posture unchanged, but something behind her eyes shifted. The noise of the restaurant returned in fragments. Glassware clinked. A server called out an order. The rain outside softened into a steady whisper against the windows. Ethan tapped the folded document once with his finger. "You recognize it," he said. It was not a question. Claire stepped closer, just enough to read the header clearly without touching it. Columbia Engineering. Admissions Office. Her name was visible on the first line. Claire Bennett. She exhaled slowly through her nose. "You should not have that," she said. Ethan's expression remained controlled, but his tone sharpened slightly. "Background checks are standard where I come from." Claire looked up at him, her gaze steady now. "I am not one of your investments." Paul shifted behind them, clearly unsure whether to intervene. "Claire, if there is a problem, there is no problem," Claire said calmly, without taking her eyes off Ethan. "Not yet." Ethan studied her reaction with quiet intensity. "You left after 2 years," he said. "Top of your cohort. Then nothing. No transfer. No graduation." Claire finally reached out and picked up the paper. The edges were slightly creased, as if it had been folded and unfolded more than once. She did not rush. She read a single line, then closed it again. "People leave school all the time," she replied. Ethan tilted his head. "Not like that." Claire placed the document back on the counter, aligning it neatly with the edge. "You are very interested in things that are not yours," she said. "It is how I built my company," he answered. "Patterns. Gaps. What people try to hide." Claire gave a small, almost imperceptible smile. "Then you should know the difference between something hidden and something protected." The words landed differently this time. Ethan did not respond immediately. A server approached cautiously, holding a tray with a printed check. "Table 12, he said quietly, setting it down. Claire glanced at the total. $284.50. She picked up the check and walked it back to Ethan's table without waiting for him. He followed a step behind. When they reached the table, Claire placed the check folder down and stepped back half a pace. "Take your time," she said. Ethan did not sit. He remained standing, looking at the half-finished plate, then at her. "You were building something," he said. "Engineering is not a casual path." Claire crossed her arms loosely, not defensive, but grounded. "Neither is working double shifts in Manhattan," she replied. He let out a quiet breath. "That is not the same." Claire met his eyes. "It is when the reason is the same." Ethan's gaze narrowed slightly. "Which is?" She did not answer right away. Instead, she reached for the water pitcher again and refilled his glass, the same precise motion as before. The small act carried weight now. "Responsibility," she said finally. "Some people inherit it. Some people choose it. Some people do not get a choice." The statement hung between them. Ethan looked down at the check folder, then back at her. "And you chose to walk away from Columbia for that." Claire's voice stayed even. "I chose to stay where I was needed." For a brief moment, something in Ethan's posture softened. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it was there. He picked up the pen from the folder, then paused. "You could have come back," he said. Claire shook her head once. "You are still thinking in straight lines," she replied. "Life does not always move forward just because you want it to." A couple at a nearby table glanced over, sensing the quiet intensity but unable to hear the words. Paul remained near the bar, watching carefully, ready to step in if the situation shifted again. Ethan looked at the paper one more time, then closed the check folder without signing it. "You are right about one thing," he said. Claire waited. "I did not come here to test the service." Claire's eyes held his, sharper now. "Then what did you come here to test?" she asked. Ethan slid the folder back across the table, untouched. "Whether you would recognize me," he said. Claire did not answer immediately. The question lingered between them, sharper than anything he had said before. She studied his face now with more intent, not as a server assessing a guest, but as someone searching for alignment between memory and reality. Ethan held her gaze without blinking. The restaurant noise dimmed again in her perception, like a dial being turned down. "Should I?" she asked finally. Ethan reached into his jacket once more, slower this time, and pulled out a second item. He placed it beside the check folder with deliberate care. It was a small metal keychain. Worn. Scratched along the edges. A faded blue tag hung from it with white lettering barely visible. Claire's breath caught before she could stop it. Building 7. Lab access. Columbia Engineering. She knew that keychain. Not just the type. The exact one. Her hand moved forward instinctively, then stopped inches above it. "You kept that," she said quietly. Ethan nodded once. "You gave it to me," he replied. The words landed with weight. Claire looked up sharply. "No," she said. "I did not." Ethan's expression did not change, but something in his posture shifted. Less rigid. More grounded. "You dropped it," he said. Second floor lab. Systems design wing. 3 years ago. Claire's mind moved quickly now, not drifting, but locking into place. The lab. The late nights. The hum of machines and the glow of monitors. She remembered the keychain clipped to her bag. She remembered losing it. She remembered not going back to find it. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "A lot of people use that lab," she said. "That does not make you someone I should remember." Ethan let out a small breath through his nose, almost a quiet acknowledgement. "Fair," he said. Then he reached for the check folder, opened it, and slid the pen out. Instead of signing, he flipped the receipt over and wrote something on the back. His handwriting was precise. Controlled. When he finished, he turned the paper toward her and tapped it once. "Read that," he said. Claire hesitated for half a second, then picked up the receipt. There was no number. No tip line filled out. Just a short line written in clean block letters. "You told me my model would fail." Her fingers tightened slightly around the paper. She read it again, slower this time. The words unlocked something deeper than the keychain had. Not just a place. A moment. A conversation. She looked up at him again, and this time the recognition was not partial. It was clear. "The simulation," she said. Ethan nodded. "The energy distribution model," he added. Claire's posture changed. It was subtle, but real. Her shoulders squared. Her voice carried a different weight now. "You were running projections without accounting for real-world load variability," she said. "Your margins were too tight." Ethan watched her carefully. "And you said it would collapse under stress," he replied. Claire folded the receipt slowly, her mind aligning past and present with precision. "It did collapse," she said. "That was public." Ethan shook his head once. "Not the version you saw." That shifted the ground. Claire's eye sharpened. "What do you mean?" Ethan stepped closer, lowering his voice just enough to keep the conversation contained between them. "We rebuilt it," he said. "Using your notes." Claire's grip on the folded receipt tightened. "I never gave you my notes." Ethan held her gaze. "You did not have to," he said. "You left them behind." The implication settled heavily. Claire glanced briefly toward the service station, then back at him. "That is not how this works," she said. "You cannot just take someone's work and turn it into a company worth $2.4 billion. Ethan finished calmly. Silence followed. A real one this time. Not just the absence of sound, but the presence of something undeniable. Claire looked down at the keychain again. Then at the receipt in her hand. Then back at Ethan. The balance between them had shifted. Not in volume. Not in authority. But in truth. "You built everything on that model," she said. It was not a question. Ethan did not deny it. Claire inhaled slowly, steadying herself. "And now you are here," she said, testing wait times and water glasses. Ethan's voice remained even. "I came to see if you would still say I was wrong." Claire held his gaze, her answer forming without hesitation. "I would say you were incomplete," she replied. Ethan's eyes flickered with something new. Not challenge. Not dismissal. Something closer to respect. He straightened slightly, then glanced at the untouched tip line on the receipt. "Then maybe," he said, "you should see what it became." Claire did not move. "Why would I do that?" Ethan met her eyes one last time. "Because the part that made it work," he said quietly, "was the part you never got to finish." Claire did not answer his offer right away. The weight of his words settled deeper than anything he had said before. "The part you never got to finish." It echoed with a precision that felt almost engineered. Around them, the restaurant continued to move. Orders were called. Glasses were cleared. A credit card machine beeped at the bar. Reality did not pause for revelations. Claire folded the receipt once more and placed it carefully beside the keychain. "You are asking me to step back into something you already took," she said. Her voice stayed calm, but there was a sharper edge now. Ethan nodded slightly. "I am asking you to look at what it became." Claire held his gaze. "Those are not the same thing." Ethan reached into his jacket again, but this time he pulled out his phone. He unlocked it and turned the screen toward her. A graph filled the display. Clean lines. Real-time data streams. Energy distribution across multiple states. New York. New Jersey. Pennsylvania. Numbers updated every second. "This runs on the system you warned me about," he said. Claire glanced at the screen, then back at him. "And you are showing this to a waitress in the middle of dinner service," she replied. "That is either confidence or carelessness." Ethan did not flinch. "It is neither," he said. "It is evidence." Claire studied the graph more closely now. Her eyes tracked the flow. The load balancing. The adaptive shifts. It was more refined than what she remembered. More stable. But something in the pattern caught her attention. A slight delay in redistribution at peak thresholds. Less than a second. Almost invisible. Almost. She looked up. "You patched the instability," she said. "But you did not remove it." Ethan's jaw tightened just enough to confirm she was right. "We reduced it to acceptable levels," he replied. Claire shook her head once. "Acceptable for who?" The question landed harder than before. Ethan did not answer immediately. Instead, he locked his phone and slipped it back into his pocket. Then he made a decision that shifted everything. He picked up the check folder, opened it, and signed the bill. No hesitation. No calculation. Then he wrote a number on the tip line. Claire saw it when he turned it toward her. $1,000. For a $284 check. Paul noticed it too from across the room. His eyebrows lifted in silent disbelief. Ethan closed the folder and slid it toward Claire. "That is not for the service," he said. Claire did not reach for it. "Then what is it for?" Ethan met her eyes directly. "For your time," he said. "Tomorrow. 9 a.m. My office." Claire let out a quiet breath. You think I can just leave my shift and walk into your building like that? Ethan's tone stayed even. I think you can choose where your time goes. Claire's expression did not soften. You are still trying to control the terms, she said. Ethan shook his head slightly. No, he replied. I am raising the stakes. Claire glanced down at the signed receipt again. The number was real. The offer was real. But so was everything behind it. The unfinished model. The system running across 3 states. The instability he had not eliminated. She looked back up at him. And if I say no, she asked. Ethan held her gaze without hesitation. Then I keep building without you, he said. And eventually, that small delay you noticed becomes a problem someone else pays for. The words were not a threat. They were a projection. A forecast. Claire felt the shift immediately. This was no longer about a past mistake or a stolen idea. This was about consequences moving forward. She picked up the check folder slowly, her fingers brushing against the edge of the paper. You are asking me to take responsibility for something I did not choose, she said. Ethan's voice lowered slightly. I am asking you to decide if you want to. Claire looked at him for a long moment. Then she closed the folder and held it firmly in her hand. The restaurant noise returned in full, but it felt distant now. Focused. Narrow. 9 a.m. is early, she said. Ethan gave a small nod. So is fixing something before it breaks. Claire turned slightly, as if to step away, then paused. If I walk into your office tomorrow, she said without looking back, I am not coming as your employee. Ethan's answer came without delay. Then come as the person who built the part one could not. Claire stood still for one more second. Then she walked toward the service station, the check folder still in her hand. And for the first time that night, she was not thinking about the next table, but about what would happen if she showed up at 9 a.m. Claire did not look at the clock again for the rest of her shift, but she knew exactly what time it was. Every movement became sharper. Every detail registered faster. The weight of the check folder in her apron pocket stayed constant, a quiet reminder that something had already shifted. At 9:12 p.m., she stepped into the back hallway and pulled out her phone. The screen was cracked along one corner, but it still responded cleanly to her touch. She opened a notes app, paused for a second, then typed a single phrase. Load redistribution delay at peak threshold. She stared at it, then added a second line. Failure point under compounded demand. She saved it without labeling the note. When she stepped back onto the floor, Paul intercepted her near the service station. What was that? He asked, keeping his voice low. Claire glanced at him. What was what? Paul gestured subtly toward table 12, now empty. That guy does not just hand out $1,000 tip and walk away. You know him. Claire reached for a stack of clean napkins and aligned them neatly. I know what he is building, she said. Paul frowned. That is not what I asked. Claire met his eyes briefly. It is the part that matters. Paul studied her for a moment, then exhaled. Just be careful, he said. People like that do not show up twice unless they want something. Claire gave a small nod. Everyone wants something. She picked up a tray and moved back into the dining room. The rest of the night passed in steady rhythm, but her attention split in a way it had not before. Half of her remained present, taking orders, delivering plates, answering questions. The other half tracked something deeper. Patterns. Gaps. The graph she had seen on Ethan's phone replayed in her mind with precision. The delay was small, but it was consistent. That meant it was not random. It meant it was structural. At 10:47 p.m., a server rushed past her carrying a tablet. Kitchen is backed up again, he said. Table 16 has been waiting 12 minutes. Claire stopped him. Show me the queue. He hesitated. Claire, I do not have time, just 2 seconds, she said. He handed her the tablet. She scanned the order flow. Tickets stacked unevenly. One station overloaded while another sat idle. She tapped the screen twice, rerouting 2 orders. "Send these to grill instead of saute," she said. "It will balance the load." The server blinked. "You sure?" Claire handed the tablet back. "Just try it." 2 minutes later, the line evened out. The delay shortened. The kitchen noise stabilized. Paul noticed immediately. He looked toward Claire, a question forming in his expression. She did not explain. She simply picked up another tray and kept moving. At midnight, the last table closed out. Chairs were lifted. Lights dimmed slightly. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets outside slick and reflective under the city lights. Claire stepped into the back room and removed her apron. The check folder was still inside. She opened it one more time. The signed receipt. The number. The handwriting. She slid the folded Columbia document out from behind it and looked at it again, longer this time. Then she reached into her locker and pulled out a small, worn notebook. The cover was plain. No label. She flipped it open to a marked page. Equations filled the margins. Handwritten notes. Diagrams. She placed the Columbia document next to it. The alignment was exact. Same notation style. Same shorthand. She closed the notebook slowly. Her reflection in the locker mirror looked the same as it had that morning. Black shirt. Tired eyes. Hair pulled back. But the stillness behind her expression had changed. She reached for her phone again and opened a browser. She typed one word. Caldwell Systems. The search results populated instantly. Headlines. Expansion reports. Energy coverage maps across 3 states. She clicked the first link and scanned the data. The numbers matched what she had seen earlier. The system was already scaling. Faster than it should. Claire leaned slightly closer to the screen. "You pushed it too early," she said under her breath. She locked the phone and slipped it into her bag. Then she picked up the notebook and placed it inside as well. When she stepped outside onto the sidewalk, the air felt colder. Cleaner. The city was quieter at this hour, but not asleep. A cab passed. A distant siren echoed. Claire stood there for a moment, looking down the street, then up at the skyline. 9 a.m. was less than 9 hours away. She adjusted the strap of her bag on her shoulder and started walking. And as she moved through the empty stretch of sidewalk, one thought settled clearly above the rest. If she walked into that office, she would not be there to help him finish the system. She would be there to prove exactly where it breaks. At 8:57 a.m., Claire stood across the street from a glass building that reflected the entire skyline back at itself. Caldwell Systems. The name sat clean and understated above the entrance. No excess. No noise. Just precision. She adjusted her bag on her shoulder and crossed the street as the pedestrian signal blinked from red to white. Inside, the lobby was quiet in a different way than the restaurant. Controlled. Intentional. A security desk sat at the center. A man in a navy suit looked up as she approached. "Can I help you?" he asked. Claire met his eyes without hesitation. "I have a 9 a.m. with Ethan Caldwell," she said. The man glanced at his screen, then back at her, a brief flicker of doubt passing across his face as he took in her outfit. Not a suit. Not corporate. "Name?" he asked. "Claire Bennett." He typed it in. The pause lasted 2 seconds longer than necessary. Then his expression shifted. "You are expected," he said, sliding a visitor badge across the desk. 32nd floor. Claire clipped the badge to her shirt and walked toward the elevators. The doors opened almost immediately. Inside, the ride-up was silent except for the soft hum of machinery. 32 floors in under 20 seconds. Efficient. When the doors opened, she stepped into a space that felt nothing like the restaurant. Open floor plan. Glass walls. Screens everywhere. Data moving in real time across multiple displays. Engineers sat at long desks, focused, quiet, each one tracking something different. Claire slowed her pace slightly, her eye scanning the room. She recognized the architecture instantly. Not the building. The system. Modular clusters. Distributed oversight. The same principle she had once sketched in a notebook at 2 in the morning. A woman in a grey blazer approached her. "Claire," she asked. Claire nodded. "This way." They walked past rows of desks toward a glass conference room at the far end. Inside, Ethan Caldwell stood alone, looking out over the city. He did not turn immediately when she entered. The assistant stepped back and closed the door behind them. For a second, there was only silence. Then Ethan turned. "You came," he said. Claire set her bag down on the table but did not sit. "You said 9 a.m., she replied. Ethan gave a small nod, then gestured toward the screens behind him. "Everything you saw last night. That is the live system." Claire stepped closer, her eyes locking onto the data streams. Energy load shifting across regions. Demand spikes. Redistribution curves. It was all there. Larger than she expected. Faster than it should have been. "You scaled this too quickly," she said without looking at him. Ethan did not argue. "We had to," he replied. "Demand is not waiting." Claire crossed her arms loosely, her gaze narrowing as she tracked a spike forming on one of the graphs. "Neither is failure," she said. Ethan stepped closer, standing just to her side now. "Show me," he said. Claire did not hesitate. She pointed to a section of the display. "Here," she said. "This delay. It is small, but it compounds when multiple nodes hit peak at the same time." Ethan watched the data, then glanced at her. "We built buffers for that," he said. Claire shook her head once. "You built assumptions," she replied. "Buffers only work if the system behaves the way you expect." Ethan's jaw tightened slightly. "And you think it will not?" Claire turned to face him fully now. "I know it will not," she said. The certainty in her voice shifted the room. Ethan studied her, not dismissing, not interrupting. "Processing." "Then explain it," he said. Claire walked to the table and unzipped her bag. She pulled out the worn notebook and placed it on the surface. The pages were filled with handwritten equations and diagrams. She opened it to a marked section and slid it toward him. "This is the part you never finished," she said. Ethan looked down at the page. His expression changed for the first time since she arrived. Recognition. Not of the idea. Of the depth. Claire tapped a specific line in the notes. "You stabilized the system," she said. "But you did not make it adaptive under compounded stress." Ethan traced the equation with his finger, then looked back up at her. "And you did?" he asked. Claire held his gaze. "I started to," she replied. "Before I left." The room fell quiet again, but it was different now. The balance had shifted. Claire was no longer reacting. She was leading. Ethan straightened slightly, his attention fully locked on her. "Then finish it," he said. Claire did not move. "You still think this is about helping you," she replied. Ethan paused. Just for a second. That was enough. Claire stepped closer, her voice steady but sharper now. "If I finish this," she said, "I decide what happens to it." Ethan met her eyes, something new settling behind his expression. Not control. Not certainty. Something closer to negotiation. "What are you asking for?" he said. Claire did not answer immediately. She glanced once more at the live system behind him. The data kept moving. The delay was still there. Small. Waiting. Then she looked back at him. Before I answer that, she said, I want to know one thing. Ethan's focus did not waver. What? Claire held his gaze. How many people are already depending on a system you know is not stable? The question did not echo. It landed and stayed. Ethan did not look away from her, but his silence stretched just long enough to feel intentional. Then he turned slightly and gestured toward the main display wall. Look at the coverage map, he said. Claire followed his gesture. A full-screen visualization expanded across the glass panel. 3 states lit up in shifting gradients of blue and green. New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania. Small clusters pulsed where demand peaked. 2.3 million active users, Ethan said. Residential and commercial combined. Claire did the math instantly. That is not a pilot, she said. That is deployment. Ethan nodded once. We crossed that line 3 weeks ago. Claire's expression tightened, but she did not raise her voice. And you kept scaling anyway. Ethan stepped closer to the display and tapped a section near northern New Jersey. The data zoomed in. A spike formed, then stabilized just under a threshold. We are not guessing, he said. We are monitoring in real time. Claire watched the spike flatten. The delay she had seen before flickered again. Still there. Still small. Still waiting. Monitoring is not the same as control, she replied. Ethan glanced at her, a hint of confidence now more visible in his posture. It is when your response time is fast enough, he said. Claire shook her head slightly. You are assuming the system will always give you time to respond. Ethan did not argue. Instead, he walked to the conference table and tapped a control panel embedded in the surface. The glass wall behind them shifted. A new interface appeared. Internal projections. Future expansion zones. Chicago highlighted in orange. Dallas in yellow. Los Angeles marked as Phase 3. Claire's eyes narrowed. You are planning national rollout, she said. Ethan met her gaze. We are already in negotiations. The pressure shifted again. Not just scale. Speed. Claire walked closer to the display, studying the projected timelines. You have not solved the core instability, she said. And you are adding more load. Ethan crossed his arms, not defensive, but firm. We have reduced failure probability below 1%, he said. Claire turned back to him. 1% of 2.3 million is 23,000 points of failure, she replied. At peak, that is not a statistic. That is a blackout. The room went still. Ethan did not dismiss the number. He processed it. Then he nodded once. And that is why you are here, he said. Claire held his gaze. You still think I came to fix your margins, she replied. Ethan stepped closer, his voice lower now, more direct. I think you came because you saw the same thing I did, he said. A system that is almost there. Claire did not move. Almost does not power a city, she said. Ethan exhaled slowly, then reached into his jacket and pulled out a thin folder. He placed it on the table and slid it toward her. Then look at this, he said. Claire opened the folder. Inside were printed reports. Incident logs. Timestamps. Geographic markers. She flipped through them quickly. Short disruptions. Seconds at most. Distributed across different regions. Each one labeled as resolved. Her fingers paused on one entry. Newark. 2 days ago. Delay of 1.8 seconds. Load spike. Automatic reroute failed before manual override corrected it. Claire looked up. This is the delay I saw, she said. Ethan nodded. One of them, he replied. Claire closed the folder slowly. And you are still calling this stable? Ethan's expression remained controlled, but his confidence did not drop. I am calling it manageable, he said. Claire stepped back from the table, her mind moving faster now. He was not hiding the flaw. He was accepting it. Working around it. Betting on it. That changed the equation. You are building around a weakness instead of removing it, she said. Ethan's answer came without hesitation. Because removing it would take time we do not have. Claire tilted her head slightly. Time for what? Ethan held her gaze. For someone else to build it first. That landed differently. Not just urgency. Competition. Claire glanced back at the expansion map. Chicago. Dallas. Los Angeles. Then back at the incident logs in her hand. Small failures. Controlled. For now. She placed the folder back on the table. So your plan is to move faster than the flaw, she said. Ethan gave a small nod. My plan is to stay ahead of it. Claire studied him for a long moment. Then she reached into her bag again and pulled out her notebook. She did not open it this time. She held it closed in her hand. There is another way, she said. Ethan's eyes sharpened slightly. Then say it. Claire did not respond immediately. Instead, she looked past him at the live system once more. The data kept moving. The delay pulsed again. Still small. Still ignored. Then she looked back at him. I will, she said. But not until you show me the one thing you have not put on any screen yet. Ethan's expression shifted. Just enough to confirm she was right. And that was the first time he hesitated. The hesitation was brief, but Claire caught it. That was all she needed. She did not press him again. Instead, she stepped back from the table and walked slowly toward the glass wall, her reflection faint against the moving data. She let the silence stretch, not as pressure, but as space. Ethan watched her, waiting for the next move, but she did not give it to him yet. She reached into her bag and pulled out her phone, unlocking it with a steady motion. You said 2.3 million users, she said, her voice even. Residential and commercial. Ethan nodded once. That is correct. Claire tapped her screen and opened a public grid monitoring site. She scrolled through live regional demand data, then held the phone up beside the system display. Your numbers align with public load reports, she said. That means your system is already integrated deeper than you are saying. Ethan's expression did not change, but his eyes sharpened slightly. Claire lowered the phone and slipped it back into her bag. Which also means, she continued, any instability is not isolated. It propagates. Ethan stepped closer again. You are stating the obvious, he said. Claire turned to face him fully. No, she replied. I am confirming that you already know it. That shifted the tone. Ethan did not respond immediately. Claire walked back to the table and opened her notebook, flipping to a different page this time. Not equations. A diagram. Layered nodes. Feedback loops. A section circled in red. She placed it in front of him but kept one hand resting lightly on the edge, not fully releasing it. This is where your delay becomes exponential, she said. Ethan leaned in, studying the page. His focus narrowed. This assumes simultaneous peak across multiple regions, he said. Claire nodded. Which you are already approaching. Ethan looked up at her. Approaching is not the same as reaching. Claire's hand lifted slightly from the page, but she did not pull it back completely. That is why you have not shown me the internal override logs, she said. Ethan's gaze held hers. The silence returned, but this time it carried a different weight. Claire straightened slightly, her posture more grounded than before. She was no longer reacting to what he revealed. She was guiding what he had not. You are managing more manual corrections than your reports show, she added. That is what you are not putting on the screen. Ethan exhaled slowly. Not frustration. Not denial. Recognition. You are drawing conclusions, he said. Claire gave a small nod. I am following patterns, she replied. Then she made a decision. She slid the notebook fully across the table this time, releasing it. You can keep that page, she said. Ethan glanced down at it, then back at her. Why would you give me this? He asked. Claire met his eyes. Because it does not solve your problem, she said. That was new. A shift in control. Ethan picked up the notebook page, studying it more closely now. Then what does? He asked. Claire did not answer directly. Instead, she reached for the folder of incident logs again and pulled out the Newark report. She held it up between them. This, she said, tapping the timestamp. 1.8 seconds. Ethan watched her carefully. Claire lowered the paper. You think the danger is in the delay, she continued. It is not. Ethan's brow tightened slightly. Then where is it? Claire folded the report once and set it back on the table. In what happened right after, she said. Ethan did not speak. Claire let the silence sit again, but this time it was deliberate. Controlled. She picked up her bag and zipped it closed, a small, audible action that marked a shift in pace. You asked me to come here at 9, she said. I came. Ethan straightened slightly. And? Claire stepped toward the door, then paused with her hand near the handle. Now I want to see how far you are willing to go before you admit what you are actually risking, she said. Ethan's voice followed her, steady but sharper now. You think I do not know the risk? Claire turned her head just enough to meet his eyes one more time. I think you know it, she replied. I do not think you have measured it. She opened the door and stepped out into the open floor, leaving him standing with the notebook page still in his hand. The system behind him continued to run. The data kept moving. The delay pulsed again. Small. Ignored. But Claire had already moved past it. Because what she was preparing to show him next was not the delay itself, but the moment it turns into something he cannot control. Claire did not head for the elevators. Instead, she slowed near the central operations floor, her eyes scanning the room with a different kind of focus now. The engineers were still working, but she could see the pattern behind their movement. Clusters formed around certain screens. Not evenly distributed. Not random. She shifted slightly to the left and stopped beside an empty workstation. The monitor was still active. A dashboard filled the screen. Internal diagnostics. Not the polished version Ethan had shown her. Rawer. Messier. Claire leaned in just enough to read without touching anything. A log window flickered on the right side. Manual override triggered. Region, Newark. Response delay, 1.8 seconds. Secondary adjustment required. Claire's eyes narrowed. Secondary adjustment. That was not in the reports he gave her. She straightened just as a voice came from behind her. You are not cleared for this terminal. Claire turned. A young engineer stood there, mid-20s, badge clipped to his hoodie, tension visible in his posture. Claire gave a small nod. I am not touching it, she said. The engineer stepped closer, glancing at the screen, then back at her. Still, this area is restricted. Claire studied him for a second, then asked, How often do you run manual overrides? The question caught him off guard. That is not something I can discuss, he replied quickly. Claire did not move. You just did one in Newark 2 days ago, she said. And it needed a second adjustment. The engineer blinked. How do you? He stopped himself. Too late. Claire held his gaze. Because your system is compensating twice for the same delay, she said. First automatically. Then manually. The engineer's posture shifted. Not defensive. Uncertain. Look, I really should not, you should not, Claire agreed calmly. But you are going to think about it anyway. She stepped back from the workstation before he could respond further. At the far end of the floor, the glass conference room door opened. Ethan stepped out, his eyes finding her immediately. He had been watching. Claire met his gaze and did not look away this time. The distance between them felt shorter now, even across the room. Ethan walked toward her, measured, controlled, but faster than before. "You are moving through my floor like you already work here," he said. Claire tilted her head slightly. "Your system is already moving like it is mine," she replied. A few nearby engineers glanced up, sensing the shift in tone. Ethan stopped a few feet in front of her. "What did you see?" he asked. Claire did not answer directly. Instead, she gestured lightly toward the workstation behind her. "You are not just correcting delays," she said. "You are correcting corrections." Ethan's expression tightened. Not surprise. Confirmation. Claire took one step closer. "That means your first response is not stabilizing the system," she continued. "It is pushing the problem forward." Ethan exhaled slowly. "We call it adaptive layering," he said. Claire gave a faint shake of her head. "You can call it whatever you want," she replied. "It is still compounding error." The words landed in the open space around them. No one interrupted. Ethan glanced briefly at the engineers nearby, then back at Claire. "Come with me," he said. It was not a request this time. Claire did not resist. She followed him past the open floor, through a secure door that required his badge, and into a smaller control room. The atmosphere changed immediately. Fewer screens. More focused. A single large display dominated the wall. It showed something different. Not live data. Simulations. Stress tests. Claire stepped closer instinctively. The scenarios were labeled. Peak demand surge. Multi-region failure cascade. Infrastructure lag. She scanned the numbers quickly. Then she saw it. A scenario highlighted in red. Rare convergence event. Probability 0.3%. Impact system-wide instability. Estimated recovery time unknown. Claire's breath slowed, not from shock, but from clarity. She pointed to the red scenario. "This is what you are not showing anyone," she said. Ethan did not deny it. "It is statistically unlikely," he replied. Claire turned to face him fully. "It is inevitable," she said. Ethan held her gaze. The confidence from earlier was still there, but something else had entered with it. Calculation under pressure. Claire stepped closer to the display again. "Your system does not fail because of one delay," she said. "It fails when all your assumptions fail at the same time." Ethan's voice lowered. "And you think that will happen?" Claire did not hesitate. "I think you are already building toward it." Silence filled the control room. The simulation continued to run, looping through scenarios that most people would never see. Claire reached into her bag. One more time and pulled out her notebook again. This time, she opened to a blank page. She picked up a pen from the console and began sketching quickly. Nodes. Feedback loops. A different structure. Ethan watched her hand move, faster now, more certain. When she finished, she turned the notebook toward him. "This is the only way you stop it," she said. Ethan looked down at the page. His expression changed again, deeper this time. Not just recognition. Realization. He looked back up at her. "This would change the entire system," he said. Claire nodded once. "Yes." Ethan's eyes narrowed slightly. "And you are just giving this to me?" Claire closed the notebook slowly. "No," she said. She met his gaze, steady and unshaken. "I am showing you what happens next if you do not listen." Claire did not close the notebook this time. She left it open between them, her diagram facing Ethan, her hand resting lightly on the edge as if anchoring the moment in place. The simulation behind them continued to cycle through failure scenarios, but neither of them looked at it now. Ethan's attention stayed fixed on the page. "This changes the architecture entirely," he said again, quieter this time. Claire nodded. "It has to." Ethan straightened slightly, his mind already moving ahead. "We would need to reconfigure the core distribution layer," he said. "That would take months." Claire shook her head once. "You do not have months." Ethan looked up at her, something sharper entering his expression. "Then what are you suggesting?" Claire reached past him and tapped a control on the console. The simulation paused. She adjusted a few parameters quickly, her fingers moving with confidence. Then she selected the rare convergent scenario again and hit run. The system recalculated. The same red warning appeared. Probability 0.3%. Impact system-wide instability. Estimated recovery time unknown. Claire stepped back slightly. "Now watch," she said. Ethan crossed his arms, eyes locked on the screen. Claire leaned forward again and manually adjusted a single variable. Redistribution timing offset by 0.2 seconds. Then she ran the simulation again. The numbers shifted instantly. The red warning did not disappear. It expanded. Probability increased to 1.1%. Impact escalated to cascading regional failure. Estimated recovery time extended beyond measurable range. Ethan's posture changed. He stepped closer to the screen, his jaw tightening. "That is not possible," he said. Claire did not look at him. "It already happened," she replied. Ethan turned sharply. "Where?" Claire reached into her bag and pulled out her phone. She unlocked it and opened a saved page. Then she handed it to him. "Public grid anomaly report," she said. Ethan took the phone. The page showed a brief, unexplained fluctuation in regional load distribution from 3 days ago. Timestamp aligned exactly with the Newark incident. Duration 2.1 seconds. Official classification minor disturbance. Claire spoke before he could respond. "That was not minor," she said. "That was your system hitting the edge of that scenario and pulling back before it tipped." Ethan's eyes moved quickly across the data. Then back to her. "This is external reporting," he said. "It does not prove internal failure." Claire nodded once. "You are right," she said. Then she reached for the folder of incident logs again and pulled out a second page. One he had not shown her before. It had been tucked deeper in the stack. She placed it on the console beside his phone. "This does." Ethan looked down. The document was marked internal. Restricted. Timestamp matched the public report exactly. But the details were different. Primary override failed. Secondary override delayed. Tertiary manual intervention initiated. System recovery at 2.1 seconds. Claire watched his reaction carefully. 3 layers of correction for one event, she said. That is not stability. That is containment. Ethan did not speak for a moment. His eyes remained on the page, reading every line. When he finally looked up, the confidence from earlier had shifted into something more complex. Not gone. Refocused. "Where did you get this?" he asked. Claire held his gaze. "You left it in the folder," she said. "You just did not think I would know what to look for." That landed harder than anything else. Ethan exhaled slowly, then ran a hand briefly along the edge of the console. "If this scales," he said, more to himself than to her, "we are not looking at isolated failures." Claire finished the thought. "You are looking at synchronized collapse." Silence filled the control room again, but it was no longer uncertain. It was defined. Ethan straightened, his posture resetting, but this time without the illusion of control he had carried before. "You are asking me to halt expansion," he said. Claire shook her head. "I am telling you that expansion will not wait for your permission to fail," she replied. Ethan looked back at the simulation, then at her notebook, then at the internal report still in his hand. The pieces aligned. The system. The flaw. The proof. Claire stepped closer, her voice steady. "You built something powerful," she said. "But you built it on a timing assumption that does not hold under pressure." Ethan met her eyes. "And your solution removes that assumption." Claire nodded once. "Yes." Ethan's next question came slower, more deliberate. "What do you want in return?" Claire did not answer immediately. She reached over, closed the notebook, and slid it back into her bag. Then she picked up the internal report and placed it directly in front of him. "First," she said, "I want you to admit this is real." Ethan looked down at the paper again. Then back at her. A long second passed. Then he gave a single, decisive nod. "It is real." The word shifted the entire room. Claire held his gaze. "Good," she said quietly. "Because the next step is going to cost you a lot more than $1,000 tip." Ethan did not move right away after he said the words. "It is real." The admission hung in the air, heavier than any number or projection on the screen. Claire watched him, but she did not speak. This part was not hers to lead. Not anymore. Ethan turned slightly toward the glass wall, but he was not looking at the data now. His reflection stared back at him, sharp lines of control that had defined him for years. Then something shifted. A memory surfaced without warning. A conference room years ago. Smaller. Less polished. A younger version of himself standing at the head of the table, dismissing a quiet voice from the corner. "We do not have time for theoretical risks," he had said back then, his tone firm, final. The young analyst had tried to explain. Had pointed at a model. Had said something about timing assumptions. Ethan remembered the way he cut him off. The way the room had gone silent. The way the analyst gathered his notes slowly, nodded once, and never came back after that week. Ethan's jaw tightened. The memory did not fade. It sharpened. The look in that analyst's eyes. Not anger. Not fear. Just resignation. A quiet understanding that he had not been heard. Ethan inhaled slowly, but the breath did not settle. Another image followed. His father's voice, years earlier, standing in a small garage in Ohio, grease on his hands, looking at a half-built machine. "You can rush a system," his father had said. "But it will always remember where you cut corners." Ethan had laughed back then. Thought it was outdated thinking. Thought speed was the advantage. Now the words came back with a different weight. He closed his eyes for a brief second. When he opened them again, the control room felt different. Smaller. More honest. Claire had not moved. She stood a few feet away, watching him, not pushing, not interrupting. Just present. Ethan reached for the edge of the console, his fingers pressing lightly against the surface as if grounding himself. Then he let go. He took a step back. For the first time since she walked into the building, his posture was not about control. It was about decision. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. His hand was steady at first, but as he unlocked the screen, there was a slight tremor he did not hide. He scrolled through his contacts, then stopped on a name. Daniel Reyes. Lead Systems Architect. He hesitated. Just for a second. Then he pressed call. The line rang once. Twice. Ethan. The voice on the other end was alert, already sensing urgency. Ethan swallowed, his voice quieter than before. "Daniel, I need you to halt the expansion protocol. All regions." There was a pause. "What?" "We are mid-rollout for, I know," Ethan interrupted, but not sharply. Carefully. "We are not stable." Silence followed on the line. Then, "Ethan, that is a big call. We are talking about contracts, partners." Ethan closed his eyes briefly, then opened them again, his gaze steady now. "We are talking about a system that is correcting itself 3 times before it holds," he said. "That is not control. That is luck." Another pause. Longer this time. "Are you sure?" Daniel asked. Ethan's grip on the phone tightened slightly. His voice lowered. "I should have listened the first time someone told me that," he said. The words came out slower. He glanced toward Claire for a fraction of a second, then back ahead. "I am not missing it again." On the other end. A breath. Then, "Okay," Daniel said. "I will start the shutdown sequence for expansion nodes. We will stabilize current regions first." Ethan nodded, even though Daniel could not see it. "Thank you," he said quietly. He ended the call but did not lower the phone immediately. His hand lingered in the air for a second, then slowly dropped to his side. The room was silent again, but not the same silence as before. This one carried weight. Cost. Change. Ethan turned back to Claire. His eyes were different now. Less guarded. More human. "That will slow everything down," he said. Claire held his gaze. "It will keep it standing," she replied. Ethan let out a breath that felt like it had been held for years. Then he nodded once. Not as a CEO. Not as someone in control. As someone who had finally chosen to listen. Claire watched him for a moment longer, then stepped closer to the console, her hand resting lightly on its surface. "Now we can actually fix it," she said. Ethan looked at her, something like respect settling fully into place. But beneath that, there was something else. A quiet realization. Because stopping the system was only the first step. And what came next would require more than just admitting he was wrong. 3 days later, the system did not fail. It paused. Expansion nodes froze mid-deployment. Contracts were renegotiated. Engineers worked through the night, not chasing speed, but rebuilding structure. And in the center of it, Claire stood beside the same console, her notebook open, her handwriting now layered over Ethan's architecture, not replacing it, but correcting it where it mattered. The delay that once pulsed unnoticed was now mapped, understood, contained. The system did not feel faster. It felt honest. Ethan watched it from a distance at first. Then closer. Then beside her? He did not interrupt. He asked fewer questions. He listened more. By the end of the 3rd day, the red scenario on the simulation screen no longer escalated. It flattened. Not perfectly. But predictably. Claire stepped back from the console, her shoulders lowering for the first time since she walked into the building. "That holds," she said quietly. Ethan nodded, his eyes still on the screen. "It does," he replied. His voice carried something new. Relief, but also something heavier. Awareness. He turned to her, as if to say something more. But his phone vibrated in his hand. He glanced down. The name on the screen stopped him. Daniel Reyes. He answered immediately. "What is it?" he asked. There was no pause this time. "Ethan," Daniel said, his voice tight, controlled. "We have a situation. Minor surge in Pennsylvania." The old layer tried to compensate before the new patch fully propagated. "We stabilized it, but there was a brief outage at a hospital network in Harrisburg. Backup generators kicked in, but," Daniel hesitated. Ethan's grip tightened around the phone. "But what?" "There was a delay," Daniel said. "Less than 2 seconds. No reported casualties. But it was close." The room went still. Claire did not speak. Ethan closed his eyes for a brief second. 2 seconds. That was all it took. He opened his eyes again, sharper now, but not defensive. Focused. "Send me the exact timestamp and load conditions," he said. "We will trace it through the new model." "Already on your screen," Daniel replied. The call ended. Ethan looked up at the display. A new marker blinked into existence. Harrisburg. The delay was there. Smaller than before. But real. Claire stepped forward beside him. The system remembered the old timing, she said. Ethan nodded slowly. And it almost repeated it. Claire reached for the console and adjusted a parameter, her movements precise but softer now. It will take time for the new structure to fully replace the old one, she said. Ethan exhaled. Time we almost did not have. He turned slightly, as if to say something else, but before he could, the door to the control room opened quickly. A woman stepped in, breathless, her coat still half on her shoulders. Her eyes scanned the room until they landed on Ethan. Ethan. Her voice broke slightly as she said his name. Ethan froze. Emily. She crossed the room in seconds. No hesitation. No distance. She reached him and grabbed his arm, her hands trembling. I just got a call from the hospital network, she said, her voice shaking. They said there was a system delay. My mom is there. She is in surgery. Ethan's face drained of color. Emily, she did not let him finish. She stepped closer and wrapped her arms around him, holding on tightly as if letting go would break something irreparable. I was so scared, she whispered, her voice cracking. I thought something went wrong. I thought, her words dissolved into tears against his shoulder. Ethan stood still for a fraction of a second. Then his arms moved. Slowly at first. Then fully. He held her just as tightly, one hand pressing against her back, the other gripping her shoulder as if anchoring her there. His own breath faltered. The control room, the system, the screens, all of it faded behind that moment. Claire stepped back quietly, her presence no longer central. She watched them for a second, then turned slightly away, giving them space without leaving the room. Ethan's voice came out lower than it had all day. She is okay, he said softly. The system held. It was close, but it held. Emily pulled back just enough to look at him, her eyes wet, searching his face. You are sure? She asked. Ethan nodded, his own eyes no longer as steady as before. I am sure, he said. She let out a breath that turned into a quiet sob of relief, her forehead resting briefly against his chest before she wrapped her arms around him again. This time tighter. This time with release. Ethan closed his eyes, holding her, feeling the weight of what almost happened settle fully into place. Not as data. Not as projection. As something real. As something that mattered beyond any system he had built. Claire watched from a distance, her expression calm, but softer now. Then she turned back to the console, her hand resting lightly on it as the system continued to run, steadier than before. Behind her, Ethan's voice came quietly, almost to himself, but clear enough to carry. It was never about perfect control, he said. He tightened his hold around Emily slightly, his voice steadier now. It was about knowing when to stop and listen.